Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Shrimp Tank. I'm your co-host, Ted Jenkins, with my co-host, Lee Heisman. Of course, in just a minute, we're going to bring in our guest, Maurice Hamilton. He is the CEO of Infinavate. We're exciting stuff today, talking about digital transportation, proven technology, and what you may need to do in your business to scale. As always, if this is the first time that you're watching any of our videos, you should go to our YouTube channel. Simply look up Shrimp Tank. From there, you should click the subscribe button and then hit the notifications bell. We have more than 1,000 videos in there. So think about this. You could spend $100,000 getting an MBA from a university. And I'm not saying not to do it, but if you want a real MBA in entrepreneurship, the best thing that you can do is surround and listen to other entrepreneurs that have gone through this journey. They've hit the speed bumps, they've hit the potholes, and they've figured out how to get a real MBA in entrepreneurship by opening, running, growing, and starting businesses. Also,
Ted, I want to mention real quick, if I may, because you did speak about the more than 1,000 entrepreneurs. I do want to recommend listening to Lex Stoley. We had a wonderful young entrepreneur, was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And, I've gotten so many calls and emails and texts. Lex beat cancer. 12-year-old superstar, has opened up 3 businesses, and with Children's Cancer Prevention Organization, you're the largest in the country that works with him. He is a spokesman for that organization. So do go back and find that episode. It was done just a few weeks ago and posted, but I'm telling you, it'll bring tears to your eyes and motivation that is just unparalleled.
Yeah, I agree. It's why I also listen, when you're downloading podcasts in the car, you go to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. Get the Shrimp Tank on your podcast, put it in your car. This is how you get an additional, I'd say, college education, MBA, and some by listening to other entrepreneurs, or simply go to shrimptankpodcast.com. You can see a replay from all of our cities. We're all over the place. As Lee mentioned before our podcast started, Houston, Seattle, we're in Columbus, Ohio, Denver, Savannah, Georgia, Boston, Boca Raton, so many places all around the country that you can hear from great entrepreneurs. And we're excited today to have Maurice on and talk about his business. And I wanted to ask you before we get into this, because I just think it's so timely right now. I don't think there's been a person out there, Maurice, that I've talked to recently who isn't somewhat interested in this whole chat AI that's come out, and people asking it to write blogs and poems and term papers. When people hear this term AI, what is it going to mean to their business in the future of technology?
I love it, and I was telling someone about a week ago. I said, if you look at companies or like Wikipedia, some of the traditional ways of actually obtaining information in a way we actually do business right now, in a year, 2-3 years from now, it's going to be like a dinosaur. It's not going to be around. When I look at companies like that, or Jasper, or there's a couple of companies out there that you can actually use AI to actually help you write term papers, email, blogs. And I think that's the future. And I think that we're actually become to a stage right now where we want to use that technology and that innovation in order to make our presentations and whatever we have to say more effective.
And Maurice, is it bananas for the average person that, is thinking, I want to start a business and grow a business? Technology is a great business, but it's also hard. It's a hard business. And when they talk about these softwares getting valuations of $29 billion with a B, is it bananas, or is it actually something that you could have $1 billion business just off of a technology tool?
And Ted, really great question. I believe that you could possibly have a $1 billion business, because if you actually, and I mentioned that word innovation again, if you have something that's very innovative, something that's a differentiator from somebody else, and you bring it to market, bring it with the right people, you can get there. I really think it's possible. Yes. So,
Maurice, I have to interrupt. Who needs innovation when you have I don't want to say it incorrectly. I want to say it right. I'm messing it up.
Infinavate, yeah.
Infinavate. Who needs innovation when you have Infinavate?
That's right.
Or
That's
Infinavation, I guess you could say. My apologies. But to give a little credibility for our listeners out there, you haven't done that much in your career. You've only worked with Fortune 150, the Fortune 150s. You've actually increased the revenues of Oracle, Microsoft, Cisco, just to name a few, just so our listeners understand who is here on the podcast. Talk a little bit about that. You've increased our revenues upwards of 20 to 25% over time, cost savings across the board. Number one, how do you work with companies that, and how do you as an entrepreneur make that level of impact at that size of a company?
And I had to bring that word back, innovation, again. And I think that was actually, I'm going to say probably 3 points, the key points to that. One, over time, my career, I really believe in, if you really have an effective business, go out there and build relationships, get to know people. And I always say it's not who you know, but sometimes it's who knows you. And if you actually go out there and you start connecting with individuals, connecting with companies, shake hands, give out your business card, even your digital business card, and just make connections. The second thing, I have to go back and look at that and say, bring innovation. Bring those innovative, that chat GTP to the conversations and say, hey, look, I've got this really great idea. And I think that really what makes me a little bit different from some other people, not everybody, but just from a small percentage of people, is that I look at ideas and I look at process and I say, hey, have you ever thought about doing it this way? Have you ever thought about integrating this way? Have you ever thought about taking a process, cutting the process down, and actually doing something different that your competitors are doing into the mix of everything, so you can change it up? Be a game changer, be a dynamic game changer. That's my philosophy.
Maurice, there's so much going at small and medium-sized business owners when it comes to technology. And I know this because I've built and sold businesses, and people talk to you about the SaaS models and the software you might need in your business. They talk to you about the HaaS models and the hardware you might need in your business. And do you store things in the cloud or not? And they're all, what would you recommend for someone to do process-wise when they're thinking about innovating technology in their company?
I would say the first thing you want to do is actually go back and get some professional coaching and some consultation. Work with people, but make sure they don't want to take you to the bank. Make sure they don't want you to go out there. And there's a CRM system that you can buy that's the top of the line. You don't need to buy the top of the line CRM system. Go out there and get enough infrastructure that you can actually get your business up and running. Go out there and seek coaching. Coaching would be another really huge aspect, I would say, to any individual starting their business. Talk to the professionals, of people who've actually gone through the trenches, people who've actually have lost money, people who've actually said, I tried that and here's what the results are, and learn from that experience, so you don't have to go back out there and repeat whatever some of the failures. I always say something about failures. Failures aren't really failures. Failures is another, it's an example or a solid business case that you could say not to do it again. Go back out there and do something different,
Yeah.
And so learn from your failures.
Well, I'd speak for Lee in saying that, it's when you talk about creating custom software, tell people, first of all, a little bit about what that means, and then how obviously somebody like you could be very helpful. But, Lee and I have been down that path as many entrepreneurs where we thought we had a good app developer, 50 grand later, we realized we got the wrong app developer. And basically I could have had a vacation in Hawaii. Instead, I just gave somebody 50 grand to build me something that doesn't work. How do you know if you've got the right person? Is there a way to validate it?
I say so. Yes. I think one of the key elements that you should look for is something that I've learned over time, is when you actually bring on somebody into your business board, see if they're really actively listening to what you're saying. If they're actually listening to what you're saying and saying, here's what my deliverables are, here's my budget, here's what my expectations are. Now I want you to repeat to me what I just said. I want you to diagram this, map this to me. I want to make sure you understood what I said. So that way, at the end of the day, when we're done with this project, when we get to a certain milestone, right, I know that I'm going to get what I want to get. And the other thing is to go back. Don't just, several things. One, don't pay them all up front. That's another key thing I've learned over time. And the second thing is to actually go back out there, set milestones, and say, we're going to set milestones. We're going to have like a daily cadence call, so we can actually talk, or whatever time frame that you feel comfortable with, just to make sure that you're crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And I want to say this, it's not a trust but don't trust, but I want to say trust but don't trust. Trust but verify. Go back and actually out there and make sure that you're communicating with the person, saying that if you're going to put a new process in place, then make sure it's right working. And then on the other part of that, that's just if you're actually going out with your business, trying to get your business going. The other idea, a solution I would suggest, is something that we do. I believe in building relationships with my clients, with my stakeholders. I actually want to sit down with everybody that's involved with the process so we can actually get input from all the different stakeholders of that organization, figure out what are they looking for, what are their pain points. So that way, you know what the expectations are, you know what the deliverables are, but you're making sure that you're clearly that you're clarifying, that you're articulating it so that everybody's responsive to whatever the results are.
Maurice, you teed that up perfectly for my next question. I tend to lean into the things. We have a lot of listeners that are entrepreneurs. They want to be an entrepreneur one day. They are entrepreneurs, and we've had a lot of guests that come back and listen and recommend us all the time. But, a lot of people think this journey, you're sitting at the top of the food chain right now, and everybody thinks it's this very easy trajectory. But if you listen, Ted, listen to what Maurice said. It was really intriguing, Maurice. When you talked about getting advice, you actually said earlier, whether you realize it or not, you said, go find people that have lost money. It was really intriguing when you said that. I sparked up. I kept quiet, but I've been waiting because you didn't say, go find the smartest people in the room. Go find everybody who's successful. You actually said, go find and speak to people that have lost money. Could you elaborate on that, number one? And then number two, I want to know when you last lost money, and I want to know what you learned from it.
That's a great question. I'll start with the finding the intriguing people to help you. And I think one of the things that I've learned a long time ago is, and you're right, you don't need to go out there and find the smartest people. I don't need to go out there and hire a top 4 consulting firm to actually give me advice and information on it. I need to go back and have a conversation with some person that has a business or that's been out there for 10, 15, or for a period of time, and actually sit down and have a conversation with he or she, and then say, okay, let's talk about this. How did you start off? Did you have to bootstrap everything for it? Did you have to get business loans out there? Who did you seek for financing? Who did you seek for your marketing, sales, so forth and so on, and try to extrapolate that information. And I've learned from even with the coaching, because I highly recommend with anybody asks me for advice on what they should do for business, I highly recommend you go and seek some coaching. I've learned from, and I'm still learning from a long time ago, say, hey, I have this really good idea. I've managed sales organizations for years and years and years. And when I was in corporate America, but that's when I was in corporate America, when I had the corporate America budget. Now, when you start running your own business for it, you look at things a little bit different. You have to go out there and say, okay, me going out there and hiring like X amount of salespeople, I overdid it. I lost money by hiring so many different people out there because it says, oh, this person has the right criteria. They'll be a good fit. And then you actually going out there and looking at that and saying, well, you're not really doing what I wanted you to do. I have to let you go. But what did that cost me? It cost me tens of thousands of dollars to go back out there and figure out that these people weren't the right individuals that I wanted to bring on. So hire the right people. Start small, take the baby steps. And then when you hit a certain goal, then go out there and bring on a second person, bring on a third person. When I'm just giving an example with sales lead to go back and answer your question. So that's a lesson that I've learned. Don't bring everybody on at the same time. Just do it gradually. Go take small steps.
And how are you doing that today? Today's market is so competitive to find high quality employees, and especially in your business where obviously there's a big shortage against the number of jobs available and the number of technical people that have the competencies to do it. How do you try to source the right people? And then how do you know whether they know what they're talking about?
It's good, great questions. When I start asking them questions and explain to me, for example, like blockchain, how does that process work? Or explain to me how we're actually going to develop a software application for the client. What are the steps we're going to take to get there? If they can answer that process based off of my information, my knowledge, and my experience of doing it, and it meets what I'm looking for, then I'll actually go back and entertain that idea. And the other question when you brought that on said, one of the key things I've learned over time is actually how you actually structure a person's pay. And I'm a big believer in pay for performance. I have no problem with paying you for the work. I'll pay you above the work. If
That's
you
Lee Heisman philosophy right there.
Oh, it is? Yeah, which is great. So I'm not going to pay you this high salary. And no, I'm not going to give you X amount of weeks of PTO in the first year. You need to go to corporate America because I'm not your person. No, I'm not the company you're looking for. If you want a stake in the ownership, you want a piece of my company, I'll give you part ownership and I'll help you with and pay you for performance and based off of what you do and you get the results we're looking for, then we can talk. We can have a conversation, And I 100%.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and I know people say slow to hire, quick to fire. And I kind of look at that. So now maybe you want to be slow to hire quick to fire and quick to hire, So,
Yeah, exactly. Well, so twofold, a two-part question for you. Number one, you did talk about paying and the cost of having to fire somebody, rehire someone is so much more than paying a little more upfront. And do you see a change in our environment? Elon Musk being a leader in the industry, telling everybody you better show up to work every day if you want to work for Tesla, for Twitter, for any of the organizations that he owns. You need to show up every day. And it kind of sounds like you have the same mentality. But when people do show up at your office or they do show up for work, talk a little bit about consulting, because consulting can have a black hole term to it. Suddenly you hire a consultant and you look up and the bill is $1 million at the end of 6 months, right? The pricing plans, the fees, is it hourly? Is it project based? Speak a little about your organization and how you operate that way.
Sure. So if I go back and look at the consulting part of it, when I actually have somebody on staff for it, and I think that's important to have somebody. I'm a kind of person, kind of old school. I know we're in a different philosophy, a different environment where there's a lot of people say, I want to work from home. I want to do that. And as to a certain extent that does work, but you still have to have that face-to-face interaction. I believe that you still have to come to the office. I'm old school. Let's whiteboard this. Let's talk about this. Let's get on the phone conversation actually, and take a deep dive into it. And I think when you actually have that kind of connection, we have that network, and you actually have that interaction and engagement with your employees, it changes the game a little bit. And then that way, when you're talking to your clients, you're actually making sure. I'm a huge proponent of customer satisfaction, that when I speak to he or she at that organization and their board of directors, whoever they are, that they're saying, okay, we're happy with this. We're happy with the direction. And where they give me input and some ideas, and they ask me questions, hey, what about this? What about that? And we can give intelligent conversation as to what we can and what we cannot do, or how we can achieve it. And I always say, maybe it's not what you cannot do. So you got to find a way to figure out how you can do it to get it done. That is not going to be a cost prohibitive for the client. And I think that those kind of interactions, those kind of engagements, they do make a difference when you actually have that kind of environment, and you're building up a culture based off of that philosophy.
Maurice, a lot of business owners that watch our program are always wondering, how do I maximize the enterprise value of my business, and one day, how do I sell this thing down the road? How do you wrap your head around that, about eventually taking Infinavate and one day, maybe somewhere down the road, you sell it? And how do you maximize the value when you're in a consultancy business?
Mm-hmm. I want to go back and address a man back in the 50s named Ray Kroc, when he actually took over from the McDonald's brothers. And I love process. I'm a process. I think process, and I see process no matter what store or business I go to. And I think that if you actually put the process in place, and that process is scalable, that you can replicate it. And when that business operates 100%, that they don't need me to come back and say anything with it, and I've got the right people in place for it, then I know I've reached a point that I say, you know what, now I can sell this business. Now I can actually go back and scale it to a different level when I achieve that particular level for it. And I think when you're building business, you have to keep process in mind. You have to think about scalability at all times, and saying, hey, look 1 to 3 years and say, when I hit these, or have an exit strategy. And so when I hit this number, or when I achieve this particular goal, then if you say you're going to sell, go ahead and sell, go ahead and do that. Have a bigger picture in mind and figure out how you're going to get to where you need to get to. And then when you achieve that goal, go back and reassess. But if you actually hit that milestone, do what you said you're going to do.
I found it interesting at Infinavate, something, if you look at your website, Maurice, you actually really focus on diversity and inclusion. You're a certified minority company. Can you kind of tell our listeners in detail what that is and what you do to focus on that part?
I want to go back, and I think one of our slogans, our main slogan, is where humanity meets technology, even though it doesn't say that there, but it still is where humanity meets technology. And when I go back and look at that and say, you know what, you have to deploy humanity with the leadership. And if you actually look at the leadership of your organization for it, you want to be able to bring on individuals who may not think like me, who may not attend the same church, or have the same spiritual beliefs as I do. They may not play the same sports. They may not watch the same sports that I want. But I want to welcome people with different ideas and different philosophies, and say, you know what, we're all in this together. And it doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what your education you have. It doesn't matter all those different variables. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I respect you, you respect me, and I want you to be able to contribute. I'm not going to actually shun anybody that has a different philosophy, a different idea than I have. I want to listen to that and to have an engagement with it. But I think that is really critical for me and my organization that we are building a culture and the leadership of our company that we actually welcome D&I. We welcome people with diverse and different backgrounds, because everybody comes from a different angle. Everybody has a different viewpoint for it. Let's all come together and figure out how we can actually make it better for our environment, but also better for mankind, better for our clients. And so it's a win-win-win for everyone.
Yeah, it's really great stuff. It was interesting as we started off the podcast and we were talking about your name. And I think it'd be great for people that are watching this. Number one, I'm watching that logo behind you to say, how'd you come up with the logo and the way that you spelled Infinavate, and where did it come from? Because a lot of times owners struggle with, how do I brand the company? What should my logo look like? And did it take you a long time to come up with that?
It did. It's just one of those things that just hit me one day. And I kept saying to myself, I really believe in innovation. And I said that because I love going back and reading books and reading stories and about how I love cars. So looking at the automobile industry, when you go back to the 1900s and people, I like going to, let me stop for a second and say, I like making presentations to people. I say, okay, by show of hands, who invented the automobile? Everybody raised their hand and said Ford. I said, bam, wrong answer. And they go back and say, no, there are so many people out there. People know Henry Ford because he actually came back and he actually figured out how to get that car. He innovated the automobile, right? If we go back and look at that, and I look at that and say, how do I bring innovation? And one day it hit me and said, I had the word infinite, and then I had innovation. I said, why don't they just get married? And why don't we come up with the slogan, infinite innovation, just call it Infinavate,
That's
awesome. That's how it came about.
So what about the logo? Did you use a design company, or is that something you came up with yourself?
I actually had a work with the marketing company. He said, hey, do you have your two eyes here? Why don't I just go back and make it this way? And you know how Amazon has the circle from here to here? And I tell people that if you look at it, if you know the whole story, it goes from A through Z. That's how he actually came up with it. I look at that and say, infinite innovation, it's all intertwined together.
Love it. I love it. Very cool.
Maurice, I got to ask this question. Your energy is infectious. So you already know that. You got a big smile on your face. I can tell this is pretty much you all the time. And I can see why there's an exclamation point in the word Infinavate. There's no question that makes sense. But I tend to ask these questions. I know as we wrap up and we only have, it's a short amount of time of 30 minutes, and we hate that it's a remote, but we love the fact that we had the opportunity to meet with you today. So Maurice, I have to ask some of our plead the fifth questions. You do have the option to plead the fifth if you're uncomfortable with them, but I do have to ask one at you is, if I were to take a poll of your management team, your employees, some key managers that know you, and I were to say, give me the one thing that you would change about Maurice, what would it be?
That's a really great question. And I wouldn't say that they wouldn't say that he's nice. They say he's a really kind guy, but he knows what he wants and is very determined to get there.
But what is the one thing, Maurice, they would change about Maurice?
One thing that they would change. That's a really great question about what they would change.
Well, listen, if you don't have an answer, I expect an email to your managers asking that question when we get off this Zoom. Okay.
That's a really great question.
What about if I asked the family members of yours? What if I said, because the work life, it's a little bit of a juggling act, but you're the same person in work as you are at home. There might be some small nuances, but if I were to ask your family, what is the one thing you change about Maurice? What would they say?
They will probably say, don't give people second chances and third chances. They'll probably come back and say you gave somebody a break and say, when you do it for one, you got to do it for everybody. But they'll say, nope, you said this, and so you're going to stick to that. If that's what you said.
I knew it, Ted, the nicest guy here, right? I knew it.
Don't put exceptions to it. So, well, they were, I would say they'll probably say that.
Fair. I just need to know for the record, Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
Are you all Mac? You believe Mac is a better environment?
I'm talking on a Mac, have iPhone, Mac, everything's Mac around here.
Wonderful. Maurice, listen, what an absolute pleasure being with you today. It's a short amount of time. Again, the remote ones give us an opportunity to meet someone like you, but we wish you were in the studio with us. One of our 15 studios across the country. We should have flown down to Houston, Ted, to our Houston studio down there. No question. Maurice, for people that want to either get in touch with you, get in touch with your organization, what's the best way that they can reach out to you?
I would say just email me directly. I love engaging with people and have a conversation. And you want me to give my email address? Would that be okay?
Please,
sure.
If you're comfortable with it.
Absolutely. So it's mhamilton@infinavate.com, MHAMILTON@infinavate.com. Or go onto our website, and you can always do info@infinavate.com, and that eventually make its way to me as well.
Well, folks, listen, every week right here on the Shrimp Tank, and now sometimes twice a week when we meet great owners like Maurice, we learn more and more about becoming a successful entrepreneur. And some of you are entrepreneurs. You're in that corporate job that Maurice talked about, and you're thinking, should I take the plunge? Should I start my own business? And at the end of the day, it can be one of the most fulfilling things in the entire world if you get the real essence of what you heard Maurice talk about today, which is passion. He has such a passion for people and this business and what he's teaching people about innovating their technology through proven solutions and the future of technology. Boy, you can earn a lot. And folks, if you haven't looked at that chat AI thing, you ought to check it out. It's exciting and scary at the same time. Your kids will not read the Cliff Notes, and they probably will write a term paper on that chat AI. Maurice, thanks again for indulging us today, letting us and our listeners learn about your business, Infinavate. If we get down to Houston, we'll definitely do another one in person, maybe at the Ferrari dealership. But thanks so much for being on the Shrimp Tank today.
Thanks for having me. If you guys come down during the rodeo, I'll take you to the rodeo.
Rodeo it is. We're in.
We love it. All right, folks. Thanks again, Maurice, and we look forward to seeing all of you next week right here on the Shrimp Tank.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.